Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started, and some more people will trickle in. But welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Mark Metzger. I am the arts coordinator and convention director here at Braver Angels. And I'm going to be your host this afternoon for the performance of That's Not a Partisan Feeling, That's Patriotic, a Portraits U.S. Election 2024 event, which is part of the Braver Angels Election Week program that is happening this week leading up to the election. This performance is presented by Braver Angels in partnership with Verbatim Performance Lab, a project of the program in educational theater at New York University, where this project was created, and as well as NYU's John Bradamus Center. The Verbatim Performance Lab uses performance to answer larger questions about current events and important issues. Tonight, you'll hear from people across the United States sharing their thoughts and opinions about the role of the U.S. president, which is outlined in the U.S. Constitution. Believe it or not, there are just 1,027 words that outline the role of the US presidency, and the role that is outlined is perhaps a more limited definition of what we may expect a president to be, given the implications of how presidents have governed throughout American history. So the big question that we are answering tonight is, what do people living and working in the United States today think and feel about the US presidency during this 2024 election cycle? Obviously, people have strong opinions about the candidates running for president, but what do people actually think about the role of the president? What do people think the president actually does in office? That's what we're trying to figure out. Verbatim Performance Lab started this investigation by going back to Article 2 of the Constitution and looking at what it actually says about the president's responsibilities. Then they crafted a series of prompts for participants to respond to. They interviewed 70 volunteers from around the United States, and tonight you're going to meet 10 of them as performed by 5 different actors. So the first thing I want to do is take a moment to meet our 5 actors. Actors, you can come from backstage, and Abe, let's show the audience our actors. Excellent. Welcome, welcome. Coming in bit by bit. So here we go. We got 3 of them. I'm going to start with Catherine. Catherine, tell us a little bit about yourself. Introduce yourself to the audience who's with us here tonight. What's your name? Where are you originally from? And where do you live now?
Hi, my name is Catherine Clary. I am originally from Texas, San Antonio and Austin. I lived in both places for a length of time, and I now live in the Pasadena area of California.
Awesome. And what do you do for a living? And what is your political leaning?
I've been an actor off and on, and I work in communications at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and my political leaning is blue.
Awesome. And last question for you. What is your earliest recollection of a US president?
Um, Earliest recollection is actually Nixon
Hmm.
resigning from office. I hadn't
Hmm.
really thought about that question in a long time, but it's a very early memory when that was happening.
Wow. Yeah, I could only imagine what Watergate must have been like. Seems
Yeah.
pretty big. Great. Well, thank you, Catherine. And let's jump to Robert Steenstra. Bob, tell us a little bit about yourself. I just said your name, but repeat it for the audience. And where are you from originally, and where do you live now?
My name is Bob Robert Steenstra. I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio, but now I live near Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. I'm
Great.
a licensed battlefield guide at Gettysburg and retired history teacher, though I come back to teach one course at a local college.
Mhm. And what's your political leaning, and where were you on Election Day in 2020?
Oh boy. Um, Political leaning. most of my life read, but the last 8 years or so, not red. More lean blue at this point. Um, yeah. And the other question you asked was, where was I 2020 election? That was a long time. I don't know what you mean. Election night, I was home watching the returns, biting my nails.
Well, there we go. There we go. Yeah, I remember biting my nails too. I think I was up in Maine. All right. Thank you, Bob. Let's jump to Trish. Same questions to you. Introduce yourself, where are you from, and where do you live now?
Yes, my name is Trish O'Toole. I was born in Albany, New York, upstate New York, and I live very close to there now in a suburb called Voorheesville.
Great.
And my political leaning is red.
Right. And what do you do for a living currently?
I'm retired speech and language pathologist. I do some acting and voiceover work as well now.
Yeah. I'm going to ask the same question to you as I asked Catherine. What's your
Okay.
latest recollection of a US president?
Being in, I don't know what grade it was, maybe third grade, and Robert F. Kennedy was killed. And I remember all of the tea. There was a big gasp from all of the tea. I don't know how they knew. Somebody came in, and the classroom was very disrupted because all of the teachers ran to see what was happening on the news. And we were kind of left not well supervised for a little while. Yeah, that's my earliest memory.
Okay. Thank you. Let's jump to Linda. Same question. Where are you from originally? Where do you live now? And what's your name?
Linda Vidlac. I identify as having spent my early childhood in New Orleans, and since then, pretty much I've been here in Maryland, just outside of Washington, D.C.
Right. And what do you do for a living? And what's your political leaning?
I'm an executive coach, and I lean blue.
Right. And where do you plan to be this year on election day on Tuesday now? It's crazy that that's already Tuesday.
Well, I am going to be doing the same thing I was doing election night 2020. I'm going to be attending the Braver Angels event. As I recall, it's listening to various Braver Angels all across the country offering readings and poems and prayers and songs. And it is so much more constructive to be doing that than, watching ad nauseum before we know anything. So.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the shout out for our upcoming election night. Awesome. And last but not least, of course, we have Diane. Diane, to you, what's your name? Where are you from? And where do you live currently?
Okay, thank you. Yes, Diane Cedar. I've been living most of my life in Pennsylvania and have recently become a bona fide Florida resident. And so most of my historical, political recollections are coming from my experiences when I was in Pennsylvania. But I'm currently in Florida. What was the next part of the question?
What do you do for a living?
Yes.
And what's your political leaning?
Yes. Political leaning is red. And I am also a performance leadership coach specializing in energy leadership. And I am also a community theater actress for well over 25 years. So I love being a part of this. Thank you very much. This is close to stage.
Yeah. Okay. And last question for you, Diane. When was the first time that you voted? Do you remember?
Oh my goodness. The first time that I voted, I actually think it was during the Reagan election season was the first time that I voted. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Well, audience, these are our 5 performers who are going to be playing our 10 interviewees for the evening who you'll get to meet. So actors, stay on stage for this next little part. And audience, this is where I'm going to need a little help from you. So you'll see on this whiteboard on the screen that we have 10 interview excerpts that you're going to be reading, but we haven't put them into an order yet. So audience, we need your help with putting it in order. On the board, you'll see a list of 10 letters on the left-hand side, and 10 state abbreviations next to them that represent the interview and what state the person is from when they gave that interview. And on the right, you'll see a pyramid that starts with solo at the top, then duet, then trio, then quartet. We're basically going to have 4 rounds of performances. And so what I need you all to do is place these interviews on different parts of this pyramid. I have 5 trivia questions here. I'm going to ask one question at a time. If you know the answer, raise your virtual Zoom hand and I will call on you and you'll get to answer. And if you get it correct, you get to place 2 of these interviews in the order. And yeah, that's how it's going to be. It's going to be fun. So let's start our first trivia question. First question is, where was the Braver Angels National Convention in 2023? Okay, great. I got a couple. Let's go with Emily Jacobs. Abe, can you spotlight Emily?
Yes.
Great. I wasn't, I was like, I can't unmute. It was in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, because I was lucky enough to be there.
Woohoo! Did you get a tour from Bob while you were there?
I did. It was awesome.
Incredible. Excellent. Okay, Emily, you're our first trivia winner. Place 2 of these letters wherever you would like.
Let's see. I will place D with Bob, and I will place B with Diane because she's in Florida right now. So why not?
Oh, and do you want for Bob, do you want it on the duet or in the quartet?
The duet is great.
Great.
And let's put the B in the trio.
Great. Excellent. Thank you, Emily. Congrats
Thank you.
on our first round winner. Next question. In the 2020 election, there were 5 states that had less than a 2% margin of victory. It was really close in the total counted votes. Can anyone name 3 of the 5 states that had 2% or less margin of victory? Anyone daring? Anyone want to dare on where was the tightest races in 2020? Okay, Jody, let's spotlight Jody.
I'm going to say Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan.
You got 2. You got 2.
Ah.
Give it another guess on another third state.
Arizona.
Yes, excellent. So the 5 states were you got Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Arizona. There was also Georgia and North Carolina. Those were the 5 closest states in 2020. So Jody, go ahead and pick 2 more. Yep. Jody, are you still with us?
Sorry, I remuted myself. Let's see. We'll put New York with Catherine.
Great. In the solo or in the trio?
In the solo.
Okay, great. So Casper, that's letter C.
And we'll put letter J with Linda in the quartet.
Great. And did you say Catherine for the solo or for the trio?
I did, but it doesn't matter.
Okay, Casper, let's put C for the solo. Excellent. Thank you, Jody. Excellent. Third question to the audience. There is a famous phrase from the American Revolution about government representation that can be found on a DC license plate. Who can name the quote that's on the DC license plate? No one from the DMV on the call, I see.
Mhm.
Linda would know it.
I know.
No one from the audience. Andy. Okay, great. Let's spotlight Andy.
Hi there.
Hello. Thanks
Uh,
for being with us.
sure. Taxation without representation.
Ding, ding, ding. Great job, Andy. Okay, go ahead and pick two more letters to place on the board.
All right. Let's do G with Trish in the trio. And F with Bob in the quartet.
Awesome. Thank you, Andy. All right. Next question. Which one do I want to do? I'm going to do this one. There are 17 districts or territories beyond the 50 United States that have the right to vote in U.S. elections. Who can name 3 of these 17 districts or territories? Okay, Julianne O'Neill. Let's spotlight Julianne.
Hi, guys. 2 or 3?
Well, go for 3. Let's see if you can do it.
The U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico.
That's 2. One more?
Oh, Guam.
Nailed it. Excellent. Thank you, Julianne. Great job. I'm not going to list all 17. That's too much. But go ahead and place 2 more.
E goes to Catherine Trio. And I goes to Diane Quartet.
Awesome. And Julianne, I'm going to keep you on since we just have 2 more. I'm gonna give you a follow-up question.
Oh no.
Do U.S. territories and districts have representatives in the House or Senate?
No. Wait, in the House representation?
Yeah.
Yeah, but they can't vote.
You got it. Wow, incredible, Julianne. Yes, they do not have representatives in Senate, but they do have representatives in the House that cannot vote. You nailed it. Great job. Go ahead and place the last 2.
H to Trish Quartet and A to Linda Duet.
Awesome. Great. That is our order for the performance this afternoon. Thank you all. Actors, take note accordingly and go ahead and head backstage to get everything in order. And we will see you all very soon again. And thank you again to our trivia players. We appreciate your help. So while the actors are getting ready, let me explain something about the transcripts that the actors are about to use. The actors were sent each of these transcripts just 48 hours ago, and we asked them to review them. All the transcripts have been anonymized, so the actors don't know anything about the identities of the interviewees. So they're performing the transcripts simply based on what the person says. We'll all find out how each participant chose to identify themselves during their interview, including the performers. The transcripts themselves, they look more like poetry on the page because they reflect the speaker's cadence. Each time a speaker pauses on the script, they take a hard turn on the keyboard to note that pause. So the actors are going to use what we call these scored transcripts and read them like a musician might read sight music or read a piece of music, might sight read a piece of music. So they're going to take their own speech cadences and make them closer to the interviewees. To give the actors a little more time to prepare, let's quickly review some demographic information about you all as an audience. So as you arrived, we asked you to complete some polling questions on your smartphones or on your computers. Let's see who we have with us tonight. Abe, would you mind sharing the results of the poll? Awesome. Very, very interesting. So with our age group, we have people between 30 and 89, and it's actually a pretty even distribution. We have a few more, the largest portion is between 70 and 79, but yeah, it's a pretty even split for the most part across our different age ranges. In terms of political leanings, most people on the call lean blue at 61%, but 22% lean red and 17% lean other. Very, very interesting. So I'm not able to show where people are joining from tonight. So go ahead and put in the chat where you're coming from, where you're zooming in from today. Right. We got someone from Washington, from Virginia, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, New York, two from New York, another from Pennsylvania, Minnesota, North Carolina, Illinois, another from Washington, California, right? Pennsylvania. Wow, so we've got a couple people from Pennsylvania, mostly from the East Coast, but some from the Midwest, some from the West Coast. Got people calling in from all kinds of places. Great. So in this room tonight, we've got people from 30 to 89. We've got reds, blues, and others, and we've got people from across the United States. This is what Brave Rangers is all about, a nice mix of people. It's time to start the performances now. Our first actor is ready. So, Mary Beth, can we get Catherine back onto the stage to start the solo?
Okay, she should be there now.
Excellent. Great. Well, let's welcome Catherine to the stage.
Hello.
Hello, hello. Great. Go ahead and introduce your piece and start whenever you're ready.
Okay. This is very much a contrast to this doom and gloom. Okay. I think that the most inspired would be watching the campaign of 26, like Bernie's campaign of 2016. I think a lot of young people felt similarly that even though he is older, he has a lot of the same values as younger generations. And it kind of feels like common sense, honestly, a lot of it. I mean, he has a way of speaking to people, and he has a very like strong moral compass where you can he hasn't changed. It feels like, because you see interviews with him from like years and years ago, and he's talking about the same things and he has the same positions, and when a person changes, he tells you why. He has a reason for a change. And so he just seems very honest person. And he also seems optimistic. Like, I think that was something that was really new and very much a contrast to this kind of doom and gloom that a lot of the other candidates were tapping into, try and further their campaign and to try and raise the alarm bells. And I think he really is somebody who wants us to focus on future, like this is the situation we're in right now in terms of climate and economic inequality, and it's dire. But we can recognize that this is what it is, and we can go somewhere better from here, you know? And I think that kind of level of pragmatism and optimism is very refreshing. And it's not, it doesn't feel, it doesn't feel like it's unfeasible. like he makes it feel like it's possible to make these changes, and he recognizes that they're going to be difficult. And but he also, I think in general, and considering how bad things seem, I think he is a pretty optimistic take in terms of what can be changed to make things better.
Thank you, Catherine. I was trying to say, round of applause for you. Great. So normally there's a polling question that we're going to launch here, but because we won't be able to see it, I'd love for everyone to just type in the chat, what is a word or phrase that stands out to you from what Catherine just spoke? So go ahead and take a moment and go ahead and type into the chat a word or a phrase from what she just said that stands out to you. Optimistic. Yeah. Optimism brings hope. A lot of optimism. Great. While people continue to put in the chat, why don't we go ahead and reveal the identity? So Casper, can you show us who is interview C? Right. Catherine, are you able to read that?
Yes.
Great. Go ahead and
27. Okay. It's a 27-year-old white woman from New York
right.
who I guess leans blue. Is that what the blue color means?
Oh, yes, that is what the blue color means. So I'll say that underneath each of these, there's blue, yellow, or red that signals their political leaning. So yeah, leans blue, 27-year-old white woman from New York. Thank you, Catherine. We've got some more people in the chat saying some words: consistency, pragmatic, doable, concern, optimism. Yeah, I agree with a lot of these in terms of what stood out. Great. Well, thank you, Catherine. We'll see you again in just a moment. Um, so as a reminder, as we begin to discuss these things that we're hearing in these transcripts, these are words of real people who have volunteered to share their thoughts and opinions for this project. Often we get to go to a play or a performance. When we go, we're expecting a work of fiction with fictional characters. Tonight, you're hearing the words of 10 real people. They are alive and well, and it's perhaps that maybe they're even amongst us tonight. As we engage in a conversation about how we're experiencing their words as performed by the actors, let's remember to be generous in our conversation, meaning that whether we agree or disagree, let's maintain a spirit of respect and generosity, as we like to say with the Brave Angels way. So now that that is said, let's move on to our duet. So whenever we're ready, let's welcome Bob and Linda onto the stage. Excellent. Let's unmute Bob so that he can speak. Excellent. So Bob and Linda, whenever you're ready, go ahead and introduce your pieces and start.
Title of mine, He Inspired Me Quite Often.
And the title of mine is I Want Things to Be Okay for All Women.
George H.W. Bush inspired me because he wasn't afraid to, change his mind and, support tax increases when he had promised not to on the campaign trail. It was made into a big deal, but, no candidate for president follows through on most of their campaign promises. So, but I think he lost the election because of that, and I think that that took courage to do that. And then the other time I thought George H.W. Bush was impressive was in handling the end of the Cold War and the demise of the Soviet Union. I thought he handled that very, very well.
Well, during Bush 2, I was working at a women's health clinic in Boston. It was gynecological care and abortions. And We had to deal with protesters outside the clinic whenever we had on the days that abortions were performed, and even on the days when they weren't. And I remember that there was a ban on speaking to women. We had a counseling group that would talk to every woman before she went and had the procedure. And because of laws that had been passed during the Bush administration, there were details we couldn't give them, information we couldn't give them, questions we couldn't ask them. And it was, I remember when, because I was working, I think I was either, I had gotten the job after or I was there before something, but I remember the before and after difference as to how the counseling sessions went.
And I think Ronald Reagan I thought Ronald Reagan's inaugural speech was great. First inaugural. I think that his speech to the people after the Challenger disaster was masterful. I mean, people still quote him. His speech at D-Day, the 40th anniversary of D-Day. That was genius. And I don't know. I mean, a lot of things that Ronald Reagan, as a person, as a leader, he did a lot of bad things. He had made a lot of mistakes, but I think he's a great president. He was a great president, and he inspired me quite often.
And that was just very, very infuriating. And I also remember during Bush how habeas corpus was suspended to put people at Guantanamo. And I think I can remember being somewhere and hearing it on the radio or something and going, how can this be? Like, everything you study in school is the writ of habeas corpus and what that means. And here it was just being, thrown away. I'm not minimizing 9/11, but so those are two instances I can remember being really feeling affected by it. And of course, the overturn of Roe versus Wade, even though I'm not of childbearing age, I have a daughter who is, and I have women comrades all over the country who are. It's not just I want things to be okay for my daughter. I want things to be okay for all women.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob and Linda. Round of applause. So, Abe, can we launch a polling question for the audience? Let's do polling question, the round 2, or the duet. The question should be, which of these 2 interviewees do you agree with more?
Yes. Why does it keep bringing up the old one? Ah, here we are. This should be question number 1.
Actually, well, we're skipping that one. Can we jump to the one after that?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for your patience, everyone. Zoom is a funny thing.
I'm seeing different names.
Yeah, the options are.
Oh, excellent. Oh, those are both from.
Oh, forgot to edit the poll from the previous actors.
Ah, okay. Well, everyone, go ahead and just type into the chat instead of doing the Zoom poll. Go ahead and just type in. Who did you agree with more? Bob, Linda, both, or neither are going to be the four options. Great. Thank you, everyone. In the meantime, let's go ahead and reveal the identities of our people. So, Casper, can you go ahead and show us who Bob was reading with interview D? So, Bob, go ahead and read the identity of that person.
Don, oh, am I muted?
No, you're
Don.
good. Yeah.
Don, 55 to 64, Texas.
Great. And yellow means that they lean other.
Oh, leaned other.
Right. And let's go ahead and reveal A.
Oh my goodness. Okay. She's a 71-year-old feminist from Massachusetts.
Right. And leans other as well.
Yeah.
Right. Awesome. Thank you, Bob and Linda. And in the chat, we've got a lot of people saying Linda for who they agree with more, a couple saying Bob, a couple saying both. No one has said neither. No one has said that they agree with neither of these people. I think there's a lot of common ground that we can find in all of this. So thank you, Bob and Linda. I'm going to send you back into the backstage. And next, let's move on to our trio, which we're going to bring back out Trish, Diane, joined by Catherine.
Hi, this is Our Country is Not a Speedboat.
This is not language for a politician.
And this is, but I felt really connected to people in my country.
Make sure that the country continues to exist. Yeah, obviously there's so many different aspects to the functioning of society. So it's hard to go off into all of that at one time, and especially as the country matures and develops, and you have antagonisms between the different branches of government, and then the development of the administrative state. So it's a fairly complex, homogeneous beast as it was. And the president sits at the top of that and tries to steer the ship. And as we often say, it's very difficult to steer some of these very large ships on a dime. You need a speedboat with, our country is not a speedboat.
I think it's to uphold the laws of the land and to keep us out of harm's way, and help us with the economy, jobs, to make sure our military is solid. And I think the most important thing right now is reuniting the country. I can't have a conversation with a lot of people in my family. If you know, the younger nieces and nephews that are Democrats, it's really, you can't even bring up the subject. Not that I'm trying to, but even in trying to be supportive of their opinion, it's just no conversation there at all. And I think that's a shame,
I don't know. There's been a lot of times. I grew up feeling quite patriotic. I've shifted the last several years, but and this is probably not a president that a lot of people would say, but I think there's a lot more respect for him now. But one of the first things I remember being really inspired by was when Jimmy Carter was president, and it was the Iranian hostage crisis.
So it's quite, I guess, an educational experience for those who go into politics and then end up being president, because it's such a learning experience being there. And one would hope that the vice president learns along with them, so that should the case arise, you have somebody to step in. And that's been a very uneven enterprise, which just speaks to the difficulty of learning and fulfilling that role. Also, there's two ways of, I say, a Janus-based approach to the present. One is looking outwards to the rest of the world, and the others learn looking inwards to domestic policy. So that would be one divide.
Actually, I talked to my sister not long ago about it, and a couple different people have talked about it, and it's, I like the, I like what President Trump accomplished. I don't like the way he represents himself. I think he's very derogatory. I think Biden is very derogatory. And I was in favor of DeSantis, but when he said Florida, where the woke go to die, it's just that's not language for a politician. I like the real names. Like, what are the issues and what are you really going to do about it? Not calling each other names. It's just, and that's why I think it's been so divisive. Because of the name calling between the parties, between the two individuals, really.
It was Christmas Eve, and he had asked people to light candles in remembrance of them. And we always spent Christmas Eve at my grandparents' house. And when I got up there, my grandpa had lit a candle that was in the window. And I just was really emotional about it. I was probably 13. And I felt really connected to people. I didn't even understand really that much about what was happening, but I felt really connected to people in my country. Thinking about people all over the country lighting candles.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, actors. Abe, let's go ahead and launch the next poll. The question this time is, which of these three people are you most likely to encounter at a family gathering? Trish, Diane, Catherine, or none of them? And again, these are based off of the people they just read, not themselves. In the meantime, let's go ahead and reveal their identities. Casper, can you show us who from California Trish was reading?
It was Joe. He is 75 to 84 in California, and he leaned blue.
Right. Thank you. And let's see who Diane was reading from Florida. Go ahead and read the identity of the person there.
67-year-old open-minded woman, Florida.
Oh, it sounds like you, Diane. And then Catherine, let's see who was behind letter E from Utah.
That was Lori, 55 to 64 from Utah, and she leans blue.
Right. Thank you. All right, let's see what's coming in on the polls. Who are people saying? Wow, it's a pretty even split for the most part. A few more people are saying they agree with Diane, the woman from Florida, who liked what Trump was doing, but not necessarily who he was saying. Same with Biden. Not language for a politician. Yeah, and then a couple just behind with Trish, and then yeah, a little bit of everyone is represented in the polls. So a couple people said felt like none of them. I'd love to actually take a moment. Someone, I'd love to hear from the audience why they chose who they chose. I'm curious, for someone who said they're most likely to encounter Diane at a family gathering. Does anyone want to talk about that for a second? You can raise your hand or you can put it in the chat. Mention, maybe why this person is, you felt like you might find them at your family gathering. Don't have to though, no pressure. Diane is myself. Julie, for real, Julie, are you actually, or are you similar? Judith said she was a feeling person, very patriotic. Ah, so no, Julie wasn't the person who gave the interview. Very similar. Yeah, totally. Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you, Trish, Diane, and Catherine. Um, Catherine, I'm going to send you backstage. Trish and Diane, go ahead and stay on. And let's bring out our other two actors for the final performance here, doing our quartet. So, welcoming back Bob and Linda. Great. And Bob, go ahead and introduce the piece whenever you're ready. Or, well, everyone will introduce the pieces, but Bob, you'll kick us off.
The title is Touching History.
My
My
title
title,
is It Really Captured Me.
sorry. My title is It is a Job Interview, Nonetheless.
And my title is I Didn't Know If It Got Counted.
Absolutely. So now we're going to move forward to January 20th, 1993. And that was the inauguration at the Capitol of President Bill Clinton for his first term, succeeding George H.W. Bush. And unlike 1964, when I wasn't, as we discussed, invited to Lyndon Johnson's inauguration at the age of 14 because of my volunteer activity, but I couldn't go because I was too young and my parents weren't invited for Bill Clinton's inauguration. I was 1994, I think 93, 4, 5, 6, 43 years old. So I could go, and I did. And be you Republican or Democrat in this sense, it doesn't matter. This is not a partisan thing. But when you're looking at the Capitol of the United States and live in front of you is the president with his hand on the Bible, and the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court is saying, do you soundly swear, ... giving the oath of office, and you personally, even in a small way, assisted in making that exact moment happen.
I was raised in an extremely Republican suburb of Salt Lake, where, like, my parents are very Mormon. My parents are boomer Mormons. So, like, I was raised being gay is a sin. I was raised, your Christianity is more important than your life. If you ever had to make a choice between your religion and your life, it would be better to die a believer than to live a non-believer. So my parents have been lifelong Republicans. And when I started becoming interested in politics when I was 14, and the nomination process started in 2016, I thought Bernie Sanders was really interesting. And I thought Donald Trump was really interesting. The populism that both of them spoke to on different sides of the aisle, it really captured me. Like, the rhetoric was really powerful, but the campaign side of things, where there's this communication that's really, it's deeply persuasive. It was the first time in my life that I felt like everything that I had ever studied and that I cared about was all in one topic, and everything was connected to politics.
I don't think there's a one-word answer for that. I think the primary responsibility is you're the commander-in-chief. You're the Gen Z terms here, I guess. You're the head bitch in charge, right? You're the one. I also believe, though, you're also the moral compass of the country. Although that's not obviously explicitly said of what the president's job actually is. Like I often tell people, it's the biggest job in the entire country. I'm not trying to sound like a complete American here and say it's the most important job in the world, but it is a job interview nonetheless. Yeah, I mean, specifically job interview status, that conversation for me, we've been through job interviews, right? We've had to have the resume to even get the call to be on an interview. You sit through your rounds and rounds and rounds. That's how I look at almost like a presidential election, you know?
I think I'll pick one recently actually. The we had a tornado come through Little Rock. It was 2023, and my voting place was changed, and so they combined two voting locations. And so this would have been a mid-year. So this would have been November of 2023. And I went in to vote, and I was the very first person in line because I was determined to get there and to be able to get to work on time. And the people didn't act like they knew what they were doing. And it was uncomfortable for me because I didn't know the voting location. And all of a sudden, I had never questioned before election security, even with all the things that went on with Trump. Camp, thinking that there were election securities issues in the 2020 election. I never had that. Never. It never occurred to me that was an issue. But this time I didn't know the guy. He didn't even tell me which way the ballot went in or should have gone in. I didn't get a receipt. I wasn't even sure my vote counted.
And then there's a big change from a Republican administration to a Democratic administration, though it could be the other way. You're in a small way touching history in your eyes, direct, not on television, not hearing it on the radio, but right in front of you. The President of the United States is being sworn in, and you helped make that happen. And there's thousands of people all around you at the Capitol who also helped make that happen. You are there, live. It's really inspirational, and it touched my heart, and I'm glad I went. And that's not a partisan feeling. That's a patriotic feeling. It's not partisan because it could be that you were there because your Republican candidate got elected. But it's the point of you, in a small way, help make that happen, and you are seeing it happen live. And it is a major change in American policy. That's really wonderful. And that's totally inspiring.
So then when Hillary Clinton beat Bernie Sanders, I had a really cringe edgelord phase where I was like, okay, Donald Trump's a populist. It's going to be great. He's going to win. It's going to be awesome. And then, I mean, I was 16. Like, I didn't vote, but it was sort of like me becoming super invested in this. And all of this content that social media was sort of throwing in my face, before I had the opportunity to critically engage with it and see like why these things were wrong. Because everything that the alt-right algorithm at the time was pushing was everything my family was saying. I didn't meet someone who was left-wing politically openly to me until I was 17 years old. And then when Donald Trump got elected, I kept being interested in politics, and I kept paying attention to it. And it was like, oh, it was just for the next 2 years was an ongoing, oh, fuck. Okay, well, he won, and now this is horrible, and people are getting hurt, and people are dying, and this is bad. And so by the time that I was 18 and I went to university, I was like, I have very deep problems, from my faith to my politics. And so over the course of the next 2 years, I went from I'm probably a blue dog Democrat to now a very progressive person, but that was a 5-year process of overwriting everything that I was raised to believe.
I believe a president needs to have a unification standard to them. They need to truly and honestly believe in bipartisanship, especially in a world that we live in today, where partisan politics is always at play and always a top of mind conversation. And because you represent the eternity of 333 million Americans. You know what I mean? Not just the people who voted for you. And so when I talk about it as a job interview, I look at it as we are giving you a tax-paying salary, a residence to live in, executive privileges, authorities to create your own cabinet, to create and put people in place of incredibly powerful positions that essentially dictate everyday life for Americans that often aren't even felt until years after that president has left office. And so I look at that very seriously and treat it like a job interview on both sides. Have I ever voted for a Republican? I have not. But am I silly and not be willing to admit that certain points of that side, quote unquote, has great talking points? Absolutely. It's politics at the end of the day. So that's what I mean by a job interview. It's just how you represent yourself. And are you actually qualified in holding arguably the most important position in the entire country?
No, it wasn't. It was the primary, because I was voting in the Republican primary, not for Trump, just to tell you, but for this guy. This guy I was voting for. As I've gotten older, I've forgotten names. Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley. I was really excited about voting for Nikki. I knew she probably didn't have a chance, but I'm like, anybody but Trump. And so because I've always been an ever Trumper. And so anyway, so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna vote for Nikki Haley. Strong woman. And I this is exciting. I'm going in there and first vote. And I didn't know if it counted. I didn't know if it got counted. I didn't even I couldn't even tell if the machine was on. If it was if sometimes they'll give, like, a vote comes in, and how many times does it come in? It was the first one for the day. And I didn't know where to look on the machine. It was a different kind of machine than normal. And because I had been used to doing it on an iPad at my previous early voting places. And so because I normally vote early at a library, anyway, that's a recent memory. I was proud to go in and to be able to vote, hoping to make a difference early on, because we were in one of the Super Tuesday primaries. So I thought, well, maybe my one vote could make a difference. It didn't. But anyway.
Right. Thank you, all four of you. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Abe, let's go ahead and launch our the polling question for this final round. Which of these four people would you like to grab a coffee or drink with? So a little different. Whose brain do you want to pick a little more? While people are answering that, let's go ahead and reveal the identities of these four people. Let's start with Bob. Bob, who from Wisconsin gave us the title for our play?
Millard, 65 to 74 from Wisconsin, and he blue.
Right. Thank you, Bob. And Linda, who were you reading from the District of Columbia?
A 24-year-old journalist from DC who leans blue.
Great. Thank you. And Trish, who were you reading from Washington?
Cameron is a 30-year-old gay cis male from Washington, and he identifies blue.
Right. And lastly, Diane, who were you reading from Arkansas?
62-year-old college professor, Arkansas, leans red.
Right. Excellent. So those are all our people who gave these interviews. Let's look at the answers for who people want to grab coffee with. Well, no one has said none of them, which is great. It looks like people are most interested in having coffee with Bob or Trish. So, um, Bob at the rally, or at the not at the rally, at the inauguration. Shame on me for calling an inauguration a rally. And Trish talking about the job interview. Anyone from the audience want to elaborate a little bit more about why they selected who they selected? Any feel free to raise your hand, your virtual Zoom hand, and tell us a little bit more about what piqued your interest. No takers. Oh, Julianne. Yeah. Abe, let's go ahead and spotlight Julianne for a sec. Great. So
Hi,
Julianne,
guys.
who'd you pick?
I picked Trish, and actually, there was something I liked about everyone. I kind of want to talk to all of them, but Trish, the person you spoke for, the fact that they wanted to consider this like a job interview, it's like I really could relate to that feeling for president. I really thought, yeah, it is a job interview, and I would love to hear how she would have thought, or the person she spoke for, um, how we could make the job interview process, or how she thinks the job interview process could be made more effective, than it is right now. But I
Yeah,
really enjoyed that. Thank you.
totally. Awesome. Thanks, Julianne. Judith said in the chat they want to know more about Linda's political development. So the young journalist who grew up in a Mormon household in Utah. Yeah, it was very interesting. And then Sherry said, Bob and I have the most similarity. So that's interesting to hear. Also interested in what Trish was saying. And Judith was so impressed by Linda being so aware, so young. And by Linda, Linda's person being so aware at such a young age. Well, great. Thank you to our four actors. This is going to end this portion of the show. We have one more section, but we'll see the actors again in just a little bit. But for now, I'm going to send them backstage. Thank you all again for your wonderful performances today. So what we're doing at this point is we're going to transition now into a larger conversation about what we've heard. I'd like to actually get 3 volunteers from the audience who would like to share their reactions. I know we've been doing this a little bit, but 3 brave volunteers to come forward and let me talk to them for a little bit. So if we can get some 3 raised hands, that would be awesome. Any brave volunteers from the audience? Well, I can see the list of participants, so I might call on some of you. Okay, Judith raised her hand. Bobby Trump. Oh, the threat seemed to have made some people more. Yeah, okay. Let's spotlight Bobby. Let's spotlight Judith. And do we have a third brave volunteer? maybe someone who hasn't spoken up yet.
And those who wish to speak, please also turn on your videos.
Great. Okay, I'm gonna call on. Hey, Joe, are you with us? Would you be interested? And Abe, are we spotlighting Judith?
She has not turned on her video. Let me
Okay,
try again.
got it. Okay. All right. Excellent. Hello, Joe. Thank you for letting me call on you.
Sure.
Um, okay. Well, maybe we can't get Judith's video. Let's ask her to unmute. And in the meantime, let's hear from Bobby and Joe, and hopefully we'll hear from Judith as well. So I want to just start with having you all introduce yourselves to the audience. So go ahead and say your name, where you're from originally, and where you live now. And let's start with Bobby.
So I live in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I actually was born here in the Midwest. I lived in North Dakota, Montana, Missouri, and moved back. So I'm a Midwest girl.
Awesome. And what do you do for a living? And if you're open to it, what's your political leaning for
Sure.
sure?
I work in advertising and marketing. I'm actually currently in grad school for a master's in social work as well. So I'm working full time on grad school full time. And I lead worship at a church here in town part time.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
So
Oh,
I would say my political leaning is probably centrist.
yeah, right in the middle.
Yeah.
And Judith, we got you to join us. Great to see you. Thanks for being a brave volunteer. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Let us know your name, where you're from originally, and where you live now.
I'm Judy Lane. Live in Sacramento, California, born in California. I'm just turned 80. I was unable to vote for Lyndon Johnson in 64 because I was only 20. And so I've been a Democrat all this time.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just crazy about Braver Angels. And I try to, proselytize, get other people to figure out how to talk calmly and to have curiosity about people instead of judgment. Oh, I'm also a Unitarian Universalist, and we're all about that concept anyway. So
Right.
yeah, I'm a church lady. I do committee work and
Awesome.
so on. So that's all about me.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being with us, Judith. And Joe, go ahead and introduce yourself. Oh, Joe's muted. Abe, can we unmute Joe?
I had to figure out I needed to click it was okay to be on a recording. I didn't realize that.
Got it.
Sorry about that. That was my fault. My name's Joe Salvatore, and I am originally from a small town in southern New Jersey called Pittman. It's about a half hour outside of Philadelphia. And I currently live in New York City. And I am a professor at NYU.
Great. And Joe, you're welcome to reveal more if you would like, but do you want to leave it at that?
I mean, well, I would say that my political affiliation is close to center, maybe leaning towards the bluish side of center. And what Mark?
Well, I was going to say, the audience, Joe is the person who devised this. He runs Verbatim Performance Lab. So this whole piece is his brainchild, and he's getting to watch us do it, which is very exciting.
You just outed me there, Mark. So
Yes.
yes, sounds good.
Okay, so a couple questions for Bobby Joe and Judith. The first question that I want to hear from you all, let's start with this one. Which of these interviews resonated with you the most? Out of the 10, was there one in particular that really stuck with you? Um, I'll give you a second to think about it. And if you got an answer, go ahead and jump in.
I think probably interview H, Cameron,
Mm.
mostly because of his curiosity and willingness to ask questions and because I think someone else said it in the chat or maybe verbally, but like the idea of the office of the presidency being it is a job interview. They do set some standard, or at least that's always been a feeling that I've had, that they set a standard for the country and how we're seen in the world around us. So
Yeah, yeah, totally. I It was interesting to hear it because I never think about myself in terms of like, oh, this is a salaried position. Like we are the taxpayers who are funding this person's job and, giving him the privileges and benefits that are outlined in a contract. So it was really interesting to hear that. Judith, was there an interview that resonated with you the most?
Well, again, it was the one Linda did, the young journalist. I would just be fascinated. See, I don't have any kids or much connection with younger people, and so it would really be fascinating to talk to somebody so aware. I was really alarmed by the person from Florida who wasn't, or Arkansas, who wasn't sure about the voting process.
Yeah,
It-
hearing their experience of not knowing if their vote counted.
And the fact that, disruption in a state can lead people to not to trust in the process. So that one really stood out too.
Yeah, and putting a real experience to something that I'm certainly hearing about in the news every single day, and what leads someone to have that kind of distrust and uncertainty. But really interesting to hear that from someone. Joe, what about you? What resonated with you the most of these 10 today?
Um, so I've heard them before in other iterations, so it's always interesting to hear ones that I've heard before read by a new set of actors. And I think that uh, the one the one about Jimmy Carter really sticks out for me because I each time I've heard it, it sticks out for me because I was um, gosh, I guess I would have been like 8 or 9 in that moment. And one of a sibling of mine was born right ahead of that Christmas. And I remember there was sort of I don't remember the candle lighting request because I was too young, I think, to remember that. But I remember there being sort of a connection between the birth of my younger brother and this hostage situation. And so to hear someone reflect who's slightly older than it seems like reflecting with a stronger memory of the candle lighting always sticks out for me and makes me think about these moments when uh in the past when the citizenry of the US has been able to come together around something like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Joe. Okay, next question. Were there any reoccurring themes or issues that you heard across all of these different interviews? Like, was there something that felt like it kept coming up or a sense of common ground across all of these interviews? Go ahead and take a moment to think about it. And Judith, I might start with you. Do you feel that there was any sort of reoccurring theme or concern or common ground across these 10 pieces?
Well, were these random people interviewed? Because they were all concerned about government and leadership
Hmm.
and, the state of the country. So that's reassuring, whichever side of the aisle they might be on.
Yeah. A collective sense that, yeah, there's concern that things maybe aren't going as well as they could be or should be from each of these 10. No one was saying like, this is great, keep it up. At the
But
moment.
an interest and a sense of connection to the process. I'm sure they all go and vote every time.
Mm, yeah, totally. Bobby, what about you? Did you get a sense of any reoccurring themes or points of commonality?
Um, I mean, I think I heard it in different forms and fashions and each person who read, but just about wanting to um, be comfortable with whoever's in leadership, like wanting to believe that they're going to do the best for the people and the nation, and like questioning that, like there's kind of that in and out of wondering if this leader they did these things well, but maybe they didn't do these things well. Like there's some reflecting on past leaders and maybe some concern about future state. So
Yeah. Joe, what about you? Did you have a sense of any reoccurring themes?
Yeah, something I think both implicitly and explicitly something about qualifications.
Hmm.
Seems like there's sort of some, the job interview one obviously, is very specific about qualifications, but I think in some ways, um, there's something about the qualifications that the president needs to have that's woven throughout the 10 in some, both, some are more explicit than others about it.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Was there anything that you found surprising that you heard today? Something you wouldn't have expected to hear, or maybe something you're surprised that you agreed with when you saw the identity of the person, or I don't know, what was like a whoa, that wasn't expecting that. Any moments throughout today like that? Judith, you seem like, yeah, you got
Yeah,
any.
yeah. I I was surprised by the one Bob read about a person who started volunteering for Democrats when he was 14.
Hmm.
And what was surprising in these times was his warmth, his excitement about being part of the the positive process of choosing a leader here.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Um, Bobby, was there anything for you that you found surprising?
um sometimes I think that we feel like we're so far apart as people with political leanings, but it was a little hard in some of these to determine where they leaned,
Hmm.
just because a lot of the some of the commentary would suggest one thing or another. I mean, usually you can kind of figure that out, but I think the beautiful thing about a process like this is that, and obviously that's what you're trying to do with Braver Angels, is to have better conversations to show that we aren't necessarily so far apart if we could just look at each other um, in a positive light or as equals.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and Joe, you obviously you know these interviews, but was there anything that you found surprising today?
Um, I think the one of this, I'm always struck by the second piece that Diane read from the college professor from Arkansas, who is talking about questioning whether her vote has been counted. And then when, about a third of the way through or halfway through, we learned that she identifies as Republican. And I personally often don't think of um, I often don't think of Republicans raising the question about whether they are allowed to vote or their votes are counted. And so that piece always sort of points out my own bias there and says, I gotta step back and think about this and be really clear and open-minded to when folks question our voting process, which is also, unnerving given that it's unfolding right now and we're in the middle of it. But I appreciate that piece so much because it challenges my own biases.
Yeah.
And it every single time it does it. I've heard it 3 times in performance now, and it happens every time. So
thank you. Okay, very last question. The election's already underway, so you've maybe already voted, maybe you haven't. You've probably already picked who you're going to vote. But what you experienced today in the performance, does it change the way maybe you're thinking about this election in any way? Maybe not in the way you're going to cast your ballot, but maybe the ways in which we respond to the election or the aftermath of it, or the people who, we're all collectively creating this election. Have you had any shift or, an impactful thinking based off of today's experience? Yeah, Judith.
It adds to my sense of optimism.
Hmm.
It was a pretty blue company here today, but the engagement and the patriotism shown makes me feel good. So it added to some of the optimistic things we're hearing, at least in the left-wing media.
Yeah, great. Well, I'm glad that you felt some optimism and hope right now. That's what we're doing right now. This performance is part of what we're calling the American Hope Campaign at Braver Angels. Our goal is to really be creating hope in this time when I think a lot of people feel despair about what's ahead. So thank you for the feedback that this worked for you today. Bobby, what about you? Does this, shift how you're thinking about the election at all?
No, not that it shifts. I try to have a really wide range of people that I engage with that are all across the board and they're thinking. But what I love about this is it does bring different people groups together who hopefully are curious enough to want to have good conversations. And yeah, like Judith said, like that optimism. I think it's good to be optimistic, right? And regardless of even like the national turnout of just the president, we've been doing such a big push here just locally. Like, what does it look like statewide to do the work to reach across the aisle and to get things done that are helpful for the community as a whole. So
great. Awesome. Thank you, Bobby. And Joe, we'll close out with you. Is this changing at all the way that you're thinking about the election, or how's this project? As you're in a unique position. How has doing this whole thing shifted your thinking about this election?
I think I agree that it made me more optimistic, I think, and makes me realize, I think, and this is, Bobby and Judith both referenced this in their comments throughout this conversation, that there's way more sort of common ground than I think we're led to believe. And so we did this event in a school on this past Wednesday evening for a school community. And one of the teachers in the school community said that he was struck by the 10 voices that they heard that evening in the school community. If we would spend more time listening to those 10 voices than the voices that are coming at us in the media all the time, that we might be, far better equipped to manage moments like this. And so Mark, I thought of the work of Braver Angels. I think this work, everything that your organization is doing and what we've been trying to do with this project is about that, right? Listening to the folks who matter the most. And so it's just a real privilege to be able to be in collaboration with all of you on this project. So thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Joe. Okay, well, thank you, Bobby, Joe, and Judith for being brave volunteers and letting me ask you questions in front of everyone. Abe, we can go ahead and unspotlight our three volunteers as we close out this session. So we're almost at the end of our event. We began with the question about how people feel about the US presidency in this election cycle. But we want you to know that what you're thinking about, we want to know what you're thinking about as important for a president of the US, you, our audience. What are the characteristics or qualities that you're looking for in your ideal candidate? So Casper, when you're ready, we're going to share a screen that's going to display a word cloud. Once we've shared the screen, we'd like you all to let us know 3 characteristics or qualities that you are looking for in an ideal candidate. You can type these characteristics or qualities one by one into the Zoom chat, and the words will be displayed on the word cloud. You're welcome to take a picture of it before you go to see what this group identifies as the most important qualities collectively. And we'll also send it to you afterwards so that you can remember going forward what we all came to agree upon. So Casper's now sent it live. You can go ahead and type these into the chats. But Abe, let's go ahead and spotlight our actors one last time. And audience, as they come out, let's give them a big round of applause for their performances today. So they're all going to pop up one by one. Thank you. Thank you. Great job, everyone. So we'll let everyone come back on. Great. Excellent. Our 5 performers, big round of applause. Round of applause. Go ahead and you can bow if you'd like. And our audience is applauding from the chat, I'm sure. So you all, thank you for being with us today. If you're inspired by what you've seen, you can actually perform this show in your own community, and you can do it in person. You can dare to do it online like we've done today. But Verbatim Performance Lab has created a kit and a script that anyone can put on. So all you need are 5 performers and a space to perform in. If you're interested in hosting a performance with your alliance or in your local community, in your city, you can reach out to me and we'll make it happen. So you can email me at mark@braverangels.org. I'm not going to put that in the chat because I fear it'll pop up on the word cloud. But you can respond to the email that had this order confirmation. If you're not already a member of Braver Angels, you can join us at braverangels.org. We're the largest grassroots organization tackling political polarization in America by bringing people together across political differences through workshops, debates, and even performances like this. We have almost 14,000 members with over 100 local alliances across the country. Membership started just $12 a year, and you too can join this growing movement. I mentioned earlier, this is part of our election week activities. We're putting on a lot of events that are meant to inspire hope and offer people an opportunity to gather together with this election. So there's a few more events coming up. Tomorrow, there's going to be a workshop and a presentation on our music, the program that our music team does, including their Common Ground workshops, their songwriting workshops. So if you want to learn about how we use music at Braver Angels and even get a taste of what our songwriting workshop is, I recommend you go to that. On Tuesday, we're going to have our big election night gathering starting at 8 o'clock Eastern time. You're going to hear from people all across the country about what they're up to on election night and what they do at Braver Angels. It'll be a really inspiring, exciting thing for the Braver Angels community to come together and see people all over. And then on Wednesday, 24 hours after the election, we're going to have a national meeting called the Night After. And this is going to start at 8 o'clock on Wednesday also. And we're going to reflect on where we're at with the state of the election, the state of the country. You know, we'll see together where we're at, and we're going to hear from a lot of leaders within Braver Angels and prominent supporters throughout the evening. So people like Representative Dean Phillips, who ran for president earlier this year, Jim Robb from Numbers USA, who's working on immigration with us, Batya Ungar-Sargon from the Free Press, our founders at Braver Angels are all going to speak. It's going to be a really exciting evening. And again, we're out here creating hope. This is the American Hope campaign that Braver Angels is running, trying to bring us all together, inspire hope in this tense time. So thank you all again for being here. I'm going to bid you good night. What a nice word cloud we have there. Integrity, honesty, compassion, a good listener. That's a new one. I haven't seen that, but I love that. Very collaborative. Great. So thank you all. Wishing you a great night, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mark.
Mark.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.